Okay.
All right, let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, it's all about differences. The differences between the way people lived and thought and acted back in Peter's day and the way people live, think, and work today. About the values that people back in Peter's day had, the conflicts they got into because of changes, and the way people today have conflicts over differences of opinion and of ideas. But you, Lord, and your Son are never different. You're the same then and now and will be forever. Help us use those constant qualities of you to filter into our lives so that as we study the word of your St. Peter, we can get some understandings and some knowledge that will help us better understand the world we live in today. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, now lettuce, which is a heck of a salad. Share the screen. And there it is. And we're going to start the slideshow in the beginning. Hey, well, you know, wait a minute, I got to move this over here because that's in the way. All right. Now, this is session 3, suffering for good. And there's a lot of stuff in here, but the first thing we're going to talk about is a matter of some controversy to people today, because it says wives. That's a big cautionary word there. In the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them don't believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives when they see your purity and reverence of your lives. Now, one thing is that phrase, do not believe, really should have been translated, do not obey. So that if any of them do not obey the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. Today, is it true that wives a lot of times drive the religious life of their house?
Yes.
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 That's not supposed to be that way, but that's what it is.
Well, you look in the congregation and you see how many women are there without husbands.
Okay.
They have the kids there, but not the husbands.
In Peter's day, Christianity caused problems, right? Remember, this is a brand new thing, a brand new movement. One would be Christian and the other would not. Peter's advice to wives is longer than that to husbands, because wives had a far more difficult position.
Still
If a
do.
wife became a Christian, the husband did not, this produced a very acute problem. Because back then, women had no rights at all. A woman was a thing. Her husband owned her just like his sheep and goats. Ain't none of you women that would say, okay, that sounds good to me. Back then, in the Gospels, when it says Jesus fed 5,000, that was the number of men. The women and the kids that were there didn't count. Peter's advice, a Christian wife must remain with a heathen husband. A lot of that going on today, and vice versa. Be a good wife. She must break down barriers of prejudice and hostility and win him for Christ. She must be pure, and he must have a chastity and fidelity founded on love, and she must be reverent. Now, I worked as a school teacher once, and one of the vice principals was the kind of guy who on PTA nights went after the meeting across the street to the bar and closed the place up at 2 a.m. and came in at school the next day, not in the best of shape. His wife got into a Bible study in the neighborhood a night a week. I don't know which one it was, but anyway, she was lamenting to these people that her husband, the vice principal, was not a Christian, and she didn't know what to do about it. She tried to get him to go to church with her. She tried to read the Bible with him and to him and all this kind of stuff, and nothing worked. So they said to her, just be quiet and pray. So they did. And once the next Christmas season, they decided to have a Christmas party with this Bible group. So she said to him, look, come with me. We're just going to have a party. We're not going to read the Bible. We're not going to do anything else. We're just going to eat and drink and talk. So he went, and he's at the party. And one of the guys in the Bible study said to him, well, how you doing? He said, my back hurts terrible. So he calls a couple of other guys and says, hey, come over here. His back hurts. Oh, yeah, well, we can help with that. So they said, lie down on the floor on your stomach. And they kneeled around him. They put his hands on his back, and they prayed for his back pain and healing it. Once they finished the prayer and said, amen, they got up and said, now stand up. And he stood up, and he said, the pain's gone. What'd you do? And they said, it was God, through our prayers, that healed you. That made that man a Christian. So you never know what the Holy Spirit is going to give you to do that's going to work his work in somebody else's life. And don't shut that out from your life. How does Peter describe what a wife's submission should be like? That's a bad word for us, submission. That means making yourself minor and somebody else is all of a sudden major. What does a wife's submission be like?
I've got loving, gracious, chaste. Your conduct should be gentle and a quiet spirit and a hidden person of the heart. And you should develop
what's a hidden person of the heart?
I'm not sure. You're the Bible teacher. You tell us.
Maybe sincerity of the heart.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To be
Thank
sincere.
you. I will write that in.
Yeah, that's good, Diane. I've got to keep you around to straighten her out. Yeah.
I have the NIV Bible with those great footnotes at the bottom. And
Yeah.
it says to submit means to cooperate voluntarily with someone out of love and respect for God and for that purpose.
Right.
I thought that was good.
That's the spiritual definition.
Right.
The worldly definition of submit is different.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
You got to submit your taxes by the 15th of April. All right, why is this important?
Well, you shouldn't be contrary and argumentative just because you can. You know, you want to try to keep peace within the family and listen, and you know, that's what I think it means.
Yeah. Can you put a situation where a Christian wife puts down, belittles, and really mashes a husband who is not a believer just because he's not a believer?
Yeah, no, that's not right either.
No, you can't.
Would that cause him to say, oh gosh, I should be a believer?
No.
No, it's going to drive in the other way. Yeah,
Right.
And that's a witness to your kids too, about how.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, this is verses 3 to 6. They were still talking about women. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. And I got to stop to make this editorial comment. There's somebody on screen tonight who fits that definition really well. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. Women are honored only for being modest and self-respecting. How many women do we know outside our family that are really not self-respecting? How many women do we know, again, outside the family, that are not modest at all? Those two qualities are really clues as to whether a person that you're talking to maybe a Christian or not.
Just look at the entertainment field and you'll see
well.
some ladies that are less than modest.
Now, see, that's like in the Sun papers years ago when they used to list what was on each talk show each night. One of them said that they were going to have Christian fundamentalist strippers, which doesn't compute. I did not watch that, by the way.
That's a contradiction.
That's
Yeah.
right.
A bit, yeah.
Verses 3-6 are a quote from Isaiah 3. In that day, the Lord will snatch away their finery, the bangles and headbands and crescent necklaces, the earrings and bracelets and veils, the headdresses and anklets and sashes, the perfume bottles and charms. Wait a minute. Guys, do you see how much stuff is there these women are wearing and having to think about? The nose rings, fine robes, capes, cloaks, purses, mirrors, linen garments, tiaras, and shawls. No wonder a lady takes 3 suitcases on a 3-day vacation. There'll be a stench instead of a sash, a rope. Instead of well-dressed hair, baldness. Instead of fine clothing, sackcloth. Answer. Instead of beauty branding, I think that's answer.
What do I hit? Oh,
Anyway, Christianity came into a world of luxury and decadence. And if you want to really know what that was like, just look at what today's like and figure it out without the internet, without television, without radio, and without electricity.
Can I explain about what Isaiah was talking? I'm taking a course on the book of Isaiah with Mary Lou Roberts, and we just studied this. And whoops, it's getting.
I'll get it. You keep talking.
Okay. In those days, the women in Judah were not exactly following God's laws, and they would, back then, your wealth was shown by how many pieces of jewelry, your finery, whatever you had on, and they certainly overdid it. And he's saying that if you keep doing that and don't follow God, what'll happen is you're going to end up with, and I give examples, you won't be well dressed anymore, bald. You'll be in sackcloth. You'll be branded. It turns out if you were by another country, they made you slaves, and the women were branded so they would know that they were slaves. So that's okay, you can take it.
Okay. Peter pleads for the graces of the heart. What in the world are graces of the heart?
Beauty is from within,
Okay.
from the heart. That's where true beauty is.
Mhm.
Kindness, compassion, humility,
Okay.
patience, all those gifts from the spirit.
Right.
Who is it?
I got a message here from somebody who's
Is it?
trying to get on and can't.
No, I'm in. I'm finally in. It took me forever, but I'm here.
No. This is somebody else besides you.
Oh, somebody else besides me?
Yeah.
It was
Go
hard.
ahead Great to
I've
see
been
you,
doing
Kelly.
this. Good to see you. I've been trying to get in for a half an hour. I don't know what's wrong. And I had to do it on my phone, my computers. I can't get in my computer.
Well, you missed, oh, she's left. Look at that,
I'm still here.
Yeah, who was this?
April.
Okay, have you,
I said, call me now.
oh, okay.
Are
I'm
you-
sorry for interrupting.
Hey, Bill.
Glad interrupted.
Bill, who's trying to get on?
There's a lady named April Shepherd.
Okay.
It's like, okay, Paul. He's trying to, we knew her through
Hello?
Extreme Family Outreach.
Did you try that link I gave you? Do you have Zoom on your computer? All right. Now, go to Zoom first and then try to get.
I'm gonna sign out.
Wait a minute. Lori? I'm talking to somebody else. Lori, what's the meeting ID?
Hold on 1 second.
Why don't you put it on speakerphone so you can,
I'm getting it.
Hey, Gus.
How you doing, Cal?
Okay.
I hear you've been moving your mom.
Yep.
Did she finally get done?
Yeah. I mean, she's still got lots of boxes, but she's done.
right.
That poor Beth has COVID now, so we're all been self-isolating. I will be good to go. Actually, today I'm good to go.
We're getting the ID for you, April. Hey, just be patient.
Bill, isn't it on the page that you sent me with the link?
It's on the Pastor Jay's weekly thingy.
All right, Bill, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, it is 897-3085-0383.
Did you hear that? Yes,
Do you need the password?
yes.
yes,
358402.
402.
Yep.
Yeah. You got it. I hope to see you, because if not, then we're just going to all stop this and come over your house. Okay. Oh, I can't wait to see you. Thanks.
explain who April is.
Now, just so you know what's going on here, we're working voluntarily at a place over in Philadelphia Road called Extreme Family Outreach, which does Christian programs for kids in Edgewood and Aberdeen and distributes food and stuff to the poor people and school supplies and stuff to their kids. And the lady that just called is my executive secretary of that. And she decided that she wanted to hear what one of my Bible studies was like, because when she saw me in person, she couldn't believe that a guy like me could run a Bible study. So hopefully she'll get on. If she does, I'll introduce you to her. Okay, now.
I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Oh, there she is.
Hey, there's April. Hey, April. I wish you weren't in the supermarket because then you wouldn't have your mask on.
Yeah, I just got off of work and I gotta feed the kiddos. So I was like, I can multitask. I can do this.
Can you see the other people?
Yes, I can. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, April.
Oh, April.
Now, oh gosh, you showed us your face. That's so beautiful.
Oh,
April, we're in 1 Peter chapter 3, and we're in verse 7, which is really good for you to come in on because it talks about husbands and their obligation. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and with you of the gracious gift of life so that nothing will hinder your prayers. Now, weaker partner, that's a statement applicable to the way things were then.
No, in the, what do you call it, the footnotes about, they explained the way Peter was talking about was that the women were weaker physically than the men. He wasn't putting the wives down. And that was in the, what do you call it, the footnotes in
Right.
what do you call, what's the name of the Bible we go?
NIV.
NIV.
Yeah.
I don't know if
The
any,
Life Application Bible, yeah.
yeah.
Now, basically what Peter is saying here is a marriage must be based on reciprocal obligation. Each of you have responsibilities. Now, this is Peter on the obligation of the husband. He must be understanding, considerate, and sensitive to feelings of his wife.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
sometimes is a problem. Because how can a man be sensitive to the feelings of somebody that is wired differently? Must be chivalrous. He must treat women with courtesy. In Peter's day, chivalry towards women was unknown. He must remember that a woman has equal spiritual rights. This changed the relationship between men and women. And I can remember back with grandfather, my mother's father, in his day, women didn't work, period. They stayed at home, they did the laundry on Monday, and they cooked all the meals, and they cleaned the house and did everything. And the man went, and when he came home, he was the boss. And that's where he was, my grandfather. And that's not really reciprocal, is it?
No.
As a man fulfills these obligations, there is a barrier between his prayers and God. In other words, if a man doesn't live with a Christian heart to his wife, her needs, God will not hear his prayers effectively because of his lack of faithfulness in that regard. Now, that's a pretty heavy load, but that's the way God is. What kind of relationship could husbands cultivate with their wives? And go beyond just saying loving, okay?
Respectful.
Yeah, mutual respect.
Yeah.
Kind.
for me, it's a lot harder for me to know what a man is supposed to do because I don't know. I grew up without a dad, so only man that I know is my husband, and I guess I'm basing it off of that.
Okay. See, one of the problems that men and women have is that they come into a marriage with an idea of what marriage is all about because of the model of their parents. And so if a woman from a family where the mother was in charge marries a guy from a family where the father was in charge, there's going to be problems because they both want to be in charge. And that doesn't work. Compromise and that kind of thing is the key. And as a matter of fact, I've heard it said that to make a marriage equal, each has to give 75% of themselves to the other spouse.
We were told in premarital counseling that you have to give 100% or you'll never meet each other.
Yeah.
50-50 doesn't quite cut it.
Okay, here's verses 8 to 12.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, wait, hold on. Put your face on there so April can see you. Hey, April,
April, I'm here.
let's see her.
I'm here.
Bill doesn't let her get screen time.
Yeah. We can't fit on the screen at the same time the
Yeah.
way that it's set up.
Ever since I got married to her, her head got too big.
Finally, all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called so that you may inherit a blessing. For whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil.
Now, in light of what these verses say, what do you think about a woman, and I knew this lady, who says, I don't get mad, I get even?
No, that's, what do
That's
you
wrong.
call it? That's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not good. I can't think of it. Revenge.
Right,
No, you don't want to do revenge. You want to correct with kindness.
Right.
right.
That's why I don't agree with that. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. I guess that would be correcting with kindness. You don't want to accept the evil. You want to correct it.
Right. That's true. And one of the things that involves all this is forgiveness. Now, supposing a friend of yours in some way really angers you because they did something wrong about or to you. So you feel bad about it. You know that the person messed up and you want to forgive him or her. The problem is that forgiveness can't happen until the person who is the wrongdoer is ready to accept the forgiveness. So you've got to tread carefully there. And once again, the Holy Spirit has to motivate you and direct you in the direction you go and when you do it. Verse 8. Oh, finally, all of you be like-minded. This is a repeat. Be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate, and be humble. Verse 8. It's 6 important characteristics of Christian living. Christian unity. John 17:20-21 says, my prayer is not for them alone. My prayer also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you and me and I am in you. May they also be in us so that the world may believe that you have sent me. Verse 8, sympathy. Romans 12:15, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. Brotherly love, this is not your brother or your sister. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Love is a huge word with many different definitions. And the most commonly used one today is only focused on the physical aspect of love. But the love this talks about is a compassionate, forgiving, nurturing, benefiting kind of love that you, as you talk or be with someone else, are always looking for their welfare and to try and bring them some kind of blessing or improvement. compassion. There can be no Christianity without compassion. And if you want to look for compassion, just look at Jesus. Humility. A Christian is humble because he is aware of his utter dependence on God. Utter dependence on God. How many times a day do you walk around feeling that you do whatever you need to do and that your mind is made up that this is your next step? Your utter dependence on God is what's the key ingredient of your belief in Christ. Forgiveness. Christians are called to receive forgiveness from God and to forgive others. Now, this is about what I just said before, wherein the person that you need to forgive is willing and ready to accept that forgiveness. Now, verses 10 to 12 of that previous thing, which is on the right side of your screen, talks about keep your tongue from evil and your lips from deceitful speech. Turn from evil, do good, speak peace, seek peace and pursue it. The lies of the Lord are righteous and so forth. Psalm 34 is the source of that.
Somebody read it.
Could somebody read that Psalm 34 section, please? And
I'll read it.
thank you, Ken.
Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn from the evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil, to blot out their names from the earth. My mind just stopped. You want me to read verse 10, 12 too?
No, I already did that.
Okay.
Thank you. Have you ever been made fun of or mistreated for doing good or being a Christian?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, when I was younger, I used to get made fun of all the time for like going to like the camps and like doing things like they called it Chrysalis was the camp. And then there was other like church after school things for the church. And we were always in church because I grew up Baptist and we were always, every time the door opened, we were in church. And I used to get teased for it. All my friends were out having fun and I was in the church.
Right. In school, that can be a really, really nasty thing. And it's part of the way people bully others. If a kid is known as a churchgoer and he doesn't participate in some of the more interesting activities that kids do in school, he'll be known as a goody two-shoes and a Bible basher and all this other kind of thing.
A holy roller.
Yeah. And, you know, that's the way of the world, though. And you got to understand that that's the way it's going to be. And you got to be able to have the Lord with you so that you can endure that without getting resentful and striking back. It's one of the deals where Christ said, if somebody hits you on one cheek, turn the other one. And don't fight back. Okay. This is verse 13 and 15. Who is going to harm you if you are eager to do good? But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened, but in your hearts fear Christ as Lord. Now, all this letter is written to people who in Peter's day were being damned, ostracized, made fun of, physically abused because they were Christian. That was a brand new, off-the-wall, blindsided thing to these people. And as a result, the non-Christians began to treat the Christians as weird and different and wrong simply because they were not like them. So these verses point three important concepts. Love goodness with the passion that a zealot has for his country. Suffer because of our humanness and because of our love of Christ. Yet Christians are blessed through their suffering by God. Christians are to have reverence toward Christ. Christian suffering can't touch our relationship with God. Now, I'm going to put Lynn Hood on the spot. Through your recent experiences, have you found that you were blessed through your suffering by God?
Explain to April.
Go ahead.
I was in the hospital for 8 weeks with COVID. I was on a ventilator for 3 of those weeks, but I came out the other side, and was blessed because of all the people that prayed for me. And when I saw them afterwards, were so genuinely happy to see me again and relieved that I did well, that I can't even explain that blessing. And that the people reached out to my family who were suffering more than me, because I was sleeping through most of it. I don't remember any of the suffering, physical suffering, but they were having horrible emotional suffering through it. And, as I up and down. So I couldn't even put into words the blessings that I received from that suffering.
So let me ask you a question, which is going to be maybe hard to answer. Was medicine or God in charge of your healing?
Oh, God was in charge of my healing. I put it in his hands. When they put me on that ventilator, they give you a 50-50 shot. And I said to my nurse, I need to talk with Jesus. And we had a nice long conversation. And I put it in his hands. I said, if you want me now, I'll come. If you want to give me more time, I'll take that too. But I will submit to whatever you want from me. And now, did he put the doctors and the nurses? I had the most compassionate people all around me through that whole thing. And he taught them how to use the medicines and how to, so he was definitely behind the whole thing. I wouldn't have got well without the nurses and doctors, because they administered through, for him.
That's powerful.
Yeah, don't you think? They were literal angels that were by my bedside every day. I can't even tell you how wonderful these nurses and doctors were to me.
Well, see, you're an example of two different kinds of things here. Number one, you suffered, but God was with you.
Right.
And you were blessed by God in your suffering. Number two, the example of what you lived through and what God brought you through is a blessing to others who maybe not be suffering now, but as they begin to suffer someday, may realize what you went through, and therefore that example can spur them to do things and have confidence because it works. And you're
I can only hope so.
Well,
Yeah.
if God saved you and kept you on this earth, he's got a reason.
Is that my baby?
And the big
Keeping
reason,
Gammy's feet warm. She's keeping my feet warm.
that you're here now is because your
Gammy's
life has
baby.
changed.
Ooh.
Mom, we can hear you in Piper. Shh.
Okay, now verse 14, which is, but even if you should suffer what is right, you're blessed, is Isaiah 8:12.
Do not call conspiracy everything this people calls a conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear, and do not dread it.
That's right. See, everybody's talking about conspiracy theories. Okay, the election, in the eyes of some people that we're not too in tune with, said the election was a conspiracy against whatever his name was. Nobody calls a spade or a shovel anymore. There's a conspiracy that since it's not of their idea, it's wrong. Verse 15. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. That's an important verse. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope you have. And, just saying, I've got God is right, but the person who asked that question needs to hear more than that. Do it with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. Okay, defending the Christian faith. This is important to remember. Be reasonable. Share firsthand experience rather than a secondhand story. That's important. How do you have the hope you have? Give a firsthand experience that shows an example of what hope has given you. Share that. You know, none of us can think of a time when we didn't have hope. None of us can think of a time when something happened none of us can't think of a time when we have had something happen that wasn't from God. People need to hear that so that they'll understand in their own terms what this is all about. Do it with gentleness, humbleness, humble experiences rather than bullying. And I got an example for you. I'm coming down out of church one day, and I was just at a Bible study with Pastor John April. That's a guy who was years and years ago a pastor of Trinity. And at the bottom of the stairway was a guy I knew who used to be in his Bible study. I said, hey, why weren't you in the Bible study? He says, well, I don't do that anymore. He says, by the way, he said, can you talk in tongues? I said, no, I can't. He says, well, you better learn, because if you can't talk in tongues and you die first, you're not going to go to heaven, because you got to be in heaven. You got to talk in tongues to be in heaven. That's not gentleness. That's not a humble experience. That's arrogant bullying.
Right.
That's not true either, by the way.
I was gonna say, none of us are gonna get in there then.
Yeah. With reverence, the accent should be on love. There's a song that I'll not sing, which says they will know we are Christians by our love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is the example. And here's one of the things that if I were assigning homework, I would ask you to do as an assignment for next week. And that is this. Tell me some ways that you can show gentle love to others as you talk with them, even if you don't really know them. There's a key skill that you've got to develop in yourself. Every one of us is different in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are love personified, like Ruth, for instance. Some of us have cantankerous things about it, like me.
Mhm.
And each of us, therefore, has to develop our own love relationship model as we talk to others. What did Peter urge believers to do in the face of suffering?
Let me get my book.
This is time for your input. That's what
It must be love.
Well, he wants us to pray. He wants us to pray.
Anybody? You got something? Well, first of all,
We should always.
Look, if you can do something to alleviate the suffering, help them in their suffering, then you should.
if you're suffering, who is the basis of your surviving that suffering?
I would say prayer. I mean, just being in prayer constantly.
Okay, prayer to who?
God.
To pray to God constantly.
Right. God is your refuge as you suffer. Therefore, if you're suffering, you've got to link up with God, because without him, you're going to suffer mightily and it won't be pretty. So Christians who suffer are defended, blessed, and shepherded by God through that suffering. And if you got that, your suffering is much easier than if you don't.
As a Stephen minister, I found if you know the person you're visiting weekly is suffering because of illness or a family relationship or whatever, you listen and let them talk to you, and just, they need a sounding board that somebody is willing to listen. You're representing Christ, and you're showing Christ's love by listening. And that is so important, because so many people are right there to give advice, but they're not willing to listen and just let the person that they need to vent sometimes. And sometimes they might be angry with God, but listen, it's really important. That's what I've done with my daughter when we had as everybody knows, our prodigal daughter. And it's really made a difference in our relationship.
Yeah. Sometimes a person will be sharing something with you and then they'll stop in the middle of a sentence and there'll be a pause. And as you listen, let that pause go. Don't jump in there and put words in there, because the person is probably trying to think of what to say next. 17 and 18, it is better to suffer, for it is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. How many people are in jail because they did something good? Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. This is a difficult passage, one of the most difficult in the New Testament, because even if a Christian is to suffer for his faith, he is only walking the way that his Lord and Savior has already walked. Now, that's a concept that is really not too pleasing to the average person, because they've read about and thought about the suffering that Christ had as he went to the cross and was on the cross. And the average Christian says, I don't want to experience that kind of suffering. But our suffering is different. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The work of Christ was unique. Christ's sacrifice was for our sins. Christ's sacrifice was done for us, selfless. And the work of Christ is to bring us to God. Now, what kind of suffering is blessed?
For what is right.
Yeah. Suffering for doing good. Now, how many of you have ever suffered for doing good? Anybody?
I can't think of any.
All right, here's one of the problems we face as Christians, folks. We have trouble thinking about that simply because we tend to congregate with those of like intention.
Yeah.
We rarely get outside the Christian circle of friends, except at work, to those who are not Christian and not accepting of Christians. That's when suffering comes, when you're with those kinds of people. So the Holy Spirit is the great enabler, and the Holy Spirit someday may enable or direct you to go talk with or be with somebody that's not a Christian for whatever purpose he has in mind. And you shouldn't say no to that. And you shouldn't say, well, I've never done that before. If the Holy Spirit and God is with you, you don't need anything else but that. And don't think about you don't know what to say, because I can tell you many times when I've said things that I never thought about that were true, and those did not come from my brain, because many people think I don't have a brain, but that's another thing. So suffering for doing good.
You want me to read that?
Yeah, this is verse 19 to 22.
After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago, when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through the water. And this water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also. Not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at God's right hand with angels, authorities, and powers in submission to him.
Okay, verse 19. He went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits. Before his resurrection, Christ went to be with the dead in their shadowy world. These are the people
We're
Who-
down in hell.
were wiped out during the flood. And there are two places like that. One is hell, the place for the punishment of the wicked. And Hades is the place where all the dead went. So Christ went down to those previously deceased people before he got resurrected. Verse 20. Those who were disobedient long ago when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. In it, only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. When God flooded the world, he saved only 8 people from Noah's family. Everyone else perished without the hope of being alive with God. Now, Peter portrays Christ as the ultimate example of enduring suffering. In what ways is his suffering different than the mistreatment we receive?
I don't think anything compares to what Christ suffered.
Right.
That's true.
I think what we suffer is Bill and I were talking the other night, is less nasty and in harsh ways compared to what Christ did. But then there's some people today that are enduring persecution, like in Afghanistan, the Christians that are still there, they're being hunted down and tortured or whatever they were going to do to them just because they're not Muslim.
The thing about Christ's suffering is that we tend to remember the physical suffering he did. And one of my Jewish friends pointed out that even as he was crucified, Christ was still a Jew. And the Jewish people were really, really angry and upset and opposed to him and his mission. Now, today we suffer because people don't agree with the thoughts and focus we have on God. So our suffering is more of an emotional difference of opinion suffering rather than any kind of physical. Nobody that I know of has ever had a situation where somebody come up and said, I know you're a Christian, and whack, slap you in the face, you know? But the emotional suffering sometimes is the most deadly suffering you can experience.
Plus, he suffered everything that we did.
Yeah.
You know, he carried all of our sins with him. That's unfathomable to,
Right.
you know.
That's it.
Right.
Just proves he's a bigger man than any of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, here's my weekly offer to those who are listening on YouTube. Each week before each lesson, I send out slides that I use. And if you'd like a copy of these before the lesson, email me at my address there, and I'll send them to you several days before each week's Zoom lesson. I know-
Is the Zoom meeting code the same so I can save it?
No, I'll have to give you a different one each week, April. The first 2 sessions are now on YouTube. And all you've got to do to listen to them is go to trinityjoppa.org and look for Bible studies. The Peter icon that says display all, and it'll give you one in lesson 2, and you can see the YouTube recording that we're now making now for those first 2 sessions, so you can catch up if you want to. Now, next week, 1 week from today, 7 p.m., living for God, suffering for being a Christian, and to the elders in flock. That's what Peter covers in chapter 4 through chapter 5, verse 13. This is page 35 to 62 in your book. And April, if you don't have a book, don't worry about it, because I'll bring you up to date on whatever you need to know. And if you don't know it, and I don't know it, and who knows it? Okay. Now, I'm going to stop sharing here so that we can, oh my gosh, look at that. All these nice people. And look at that smile on April. You know, April, I don't ever see you smile like that when you're at work.
That's because I'm always got my head in the computer.
Right. We see the back of your head.
Okay. Just don't pray to your computer. Okay, Kelly,
Yes.
where's the organ grinder?
He worked really late. And so